Well, hello, all of you three-dimensional people. Welcome back to Paul's 3D Experience. When I launched this channel, I told you on my first video that this was in part to share with you my experiences of entering the 3D art and animation world, specifically at this point anyway, with Reallusion's Crazy Talk, Cartoon Animator 4, which I haven't had time to do much with either of those yet, and particularly with Daz Studio. So what I'm going to do here is, it has been about 6 months since I started using Daz Studio. So what I wanted to do was just give you my experiences, and those of you who are doing the same thing with Daz in particular, let's compare notes and see if what I've gone through is similar to what you went through, and maybe some of the things I've picked up and learned will benefit you here. All right, if nothing else, hopefully it'll be a little interesting for you. My camcorder is broken, so I don't remember, to be honest, on my first video I made for this channel if I used the video camera, which looks and sounds a lot better. So I'm using this webcam in my laptop, which is on clips held up on my steering wheel here. So I'm a lot closer to the camera than I'm used to being. It's very awkward. I have a little handheld recorder over here to try to get better sound for you. So, wow, where to begin? So it was around Thanksgiving of 2021 when I first started using Daz. And as I said in the introduction video to this channel, I didn't use Daz for the longest time, for about the first year that I was looking into this kind of stuff, primarily because they required you to register in order to download the trial. And I just didn't like that idea because, you give out your personal information, you download something, and it sucks. And then they've got your personal information. So it just seemed a little shady, and for a good year I didn't do it. Finally, I did it around Thanksgiving, and I realized, oh, okay, well, this is a legit program. It's way over my head, but it's legit. And I have to say, 6 months later, I never thought I would be as far along as I am right now. I got a long ways to go, folks. Long ways to go. But I have to admit, it is, I've learned a lot of stuff, and I'm going to share with you here today. Some of the stuff I produced, I'm pretty proud of, and that's good. And I guess best of all, it's just been tremendous fun. So, I mean, I can see so many applications for this. Like I think I said in my intro video, if you're trying to create things to augment videos like I am with my homeless consultant channel, if you're trying to make things for music videos, make a full music video with animation, or to augment, mix it with real video. If you're just trying to make ad copy, or memes. There's so many things you can do with this. It's really fun, really interesting. Let me see if I put my seat back a bit here. I feel like the camera's right in my face. It's very awkward. Maybe I should open this first. That's better. All right, so I took some notes here. I have a notes to kind of keep me on track progressively, but I'm also going to be winging a lot of this because there's just so much. So let's kind of go to the beginning. I'm using Daz Studio. To date, I have been using Daz Studio 2.16. A month or two ago, they came out with a new version, Daz 4.20. Haven't used that yet, but I will. And the first thing I should talk about here is the Daz Store, where you buy the content, for your Daz is, in case you don't know anything about this, just in case there's someone who's visiting who doesn't know about it, Daz Studio you can download for free. That's the software that lets you do the 3D manipulation and posing of characters, creation of characters, and simple animations, and render them. That's free, but it comes with almost nothing in terms of content to use to create all that. So the Daz Store is one of the places, that's certainly their preferred place, where you would go to get the content. So let's talk about the Daz Store first of all. When I created my introduction video to here, I had mentioned that when I was looking at Reallusion, I was really just not happy at all with their business practices. In terms of their competence in business, it wasn't very high. It's not the standard I like for when I run a business. And they were just doing some things that were, you know, rhyming with wheezy. And that's kind of why I went over to Daz. And at the time, or at least early on, I felt like Daz was vastly superior in all regards in terms of, competence and business ethics and things like that. And in my introduction video to this, I mentioned that I was retracting that, and that is even more so now. Daz has me really uncomfortable, to be honest. In fact, I'm almost in a moral quandary here. I want to and I need to continue with Daz the product, but Daz as a company has me really concerned for several reasons I'll talk about. Well, heck, I'll talk about one of them right now. This NFT thing, if you saw on Daz, they were pushing these non-fungible people for the longest time, and they'd never tell you what it is. And it's like when you're looking for a job, right? And you go and look at the want ads around the internet or whatever, and it says, great pay, great environment, learn skills, upward mobility, all these things, but they never tell you what the company actually does. And then you get there and it's a telemarketer or a collection agent or something. And you're just thinking, okay, you just totally wasted my time. I wasn't looking for this kind of garbage. I was looking for a real job. Well, that's kind of what this non-fungible people thing was. They never told you what it was. They sold it big time, but they never explain what is this. And that's your first, I can't. Living in this car, the gas fumes over 7 years have killed my voice. I can't sing anymore. So I can't hit. I used to have a very large range for my voice, and so I was trying to say Bing, but like 2 octaves higher, and I can't do it anymore. Red light flashing, the non-fungible thing. I've seen stuff like this before in other fields. It's a bunch of nonsense, and the fact that Daz is pushing it has me really concerned, because I don't think they're so out of touch with reality that they don't realize this is rhymes with ham. And at least one of the people who's making videos on tutorials on YouTube seems to really be pushing this NFT thing. And I didn't know what NFT was at first, but when I went and researched it, I recognized it right away from other things in music. And it reminds me a lot of iLok. In music, when you have music plugins like a synthesizer or something, or any kind of musical plugin, they're going to have some kind of copy protection to protect it from piracy, supposedly. And the most annoying one of all, one of the most annoying ones, is called iLok. It should be boycotted. It should be just driven out of existence. It's horrible. It's the thing that destroyed my computer 11 months ago. iLok is hideous. And it basically goes down to the lowest levels of your computer to uniquely identify your computer. And if you change anything in your computer, for what it's worth, it considers it a new computer, and your authorization is gone for the product you paid for. So if I change the hard drive to an SSD, for example, my music stuff won't work anymore. And the thing is, meanwhile, all the pirates out there, the people who did not pay money for the stuff and they just stole it, they're just using the products ongoing for years without any interruption, whereas I'm being interrupted all the time by iLok, and then I have my computer destroyed by it. Microsoft and iLok kind of went to war for the low-level control of my computer, and they all lost control. They couldn't access it, and I couldn't access it. So this NFT thing reminds me a lot of that. It's different, but it reminds me of it. Somebody, some wise guy comes out of nowhere and says, well, I have a plan to protect your intellectual property, your copyright, so no one can steal it. And it starts to sound more and more like Amway all the time. So shame on Daz for pushing this. What a bunch of nonsense. What a bunch of nonsense. And the idea that they're going to try to convince their customers that is good for them is despicable. They should just dump it right now, get rid of it. And I'm sorry, I'm not here to call people names and things like that, but the fellow on who makes the YouTube videos, which are very helpful, but who's pushing this thing, shame on you. You shouldn't be doing that. You're hurting people. Don't do it. Stop. Okay, this NFT nonsense needs to stop. It's an Amway scam. It rhymes with ham. All right, enough about that. I have purchased a ton of content, a shocking amount of content. But the thing is, the way the Daz Store functions is very similar to the way that my music gear stores function, and I've dealt with them for 20 years. So I hit the ground running here, and I really haven't lost my shirt on pretty much. I mean, there's a couple items here and there, but for the most part, I have just cleaned up. I mean, I should probably be in prison for how much money I've saved on these. I've just stolen these products from Daz. But and I've actually made a 3-part series masterclass on how to shop the Daz Store to teach you how to do that. If I didn't have the background in music, which there are plugins in music and loops and samples, it's very similar to the way that Daz sells their products. That's how I already knew how to make sure I get the best deals. So because of that, I'm not swimming in money, obviously. Because of that, I have managed to accumulate a vast amount of content, or at least what I think is. I'm sure if I looked at IT Roy's computer or something, he'd probably put me to shame with how much he has. But I mean, I've got enough to work with. Let me put it that way. And I'm glad. I'm glad it really is useful. And one thing I'm kind of proud of is that I haven't gotten much junk. I mean, I really haven't gotten stuff I'm not going to use or haven't used. So, I was a little worried about that when I saw how much is there. You get like a kid in a candy store, especially when they go on sale for 70 cents a piece or $1.99. I was worried I was going to start buying up a bunch of stuff I would never use. And I have to an extent, but it's always with like Genesis 2, Victoria 4, Michael 4, that kind of stuff. I don't think I'm going to be using those characters much except as background to get kind of, fast rendering background people and things. But I just don't think I'm going to have main characters that go back that far. So I've kind of more or less focused on Genesis 3 and 8. However, 8.1 I have not been terribly happy with. 8.1 seems to have some it adds some things. It adds, I think, a new engine for facial expressions and such. But I haven't had the best luck with 8.1. I've had a lot of things blow up on me. And so I find myself zeroing in on Genesis 8 to the extent that it's possible. And then secondary would be Genesis 3. But really, I haven't done anything deliberate with anything below Genesis 3. I've toyed with it to see what's going on there. And because I've just I had to get V4 and M4 because there's so much related to it from the past. But 8.1, I'm not really digging it. I'm not digging it at all. So as of now, anyway, I'm not doing anything with it. And I might just be missing something. We'll have to see. Let's see here. My lost and found folder in Daz. Now, I can't show you for reasons I'll tell you about in a bit. My lost and found folder is gargantuan, and it's filled with all these missing icons, the exclamation point, and so are a lot of the content elsewhere. What in the world is a lost and found? Now here's again getting back into business ethics. Daz is selling these products. These products are what I installed using Daz's installer. I've been using, I tried Daz Install Manager for a couple things to see how it works, but I have pretty much exclusively used Daz Central. So I'm buying it from Daz, I use their installer, and it ends up installing completely wrong, can't use the products, can't find the products. What do you call that, folks, when someone does that, when a business does that? If I go to a music store and I'm going to buy a Fender Stratocaster, so I go in and I look at the Fender Stratocasters, and I'm like, oh, these are nice, these are nice. I want one in this certain color. Will you order it for me? So Fender ships the music store a guitar. I pay them $1,000 for a Fender Stratocaster. I take it, well, to my car, I guess. I don't have a home. I take it home. I open the box and I pull out the guitar, and it looks beautiful. Everything's pretty nice. Then I start playing it and I realize the wiring's all wrong. And it just sounds like just a bunch of squawking microphonics, right? And I call up Fender's warranty department, and they say, well, there's nothing wrong. That's how we ship them. That's how we build them. And what would you call that? Wouldn't you, if that happened to you, wouldn't you go to the Better Business Bureau and the Attorney General's office in California? Wouldn't you pursue legal action, or at least try to get a refund? I mean, who sells a product that they know doesn't work and they just write it off as, well, everybody knows it doesn't work? I mean, that seems to be what Daz is doing here. Their products that they're selling, their installer, and yet when you follow the instructions and install it, it doesn't work. Folks, I don't know what else to call this. As a businessman, this offends me to the core of my being. And that's why I say I'm really losing faith in Daz. They are selling stuff that they know just doesn't work. It doesn't install right. So my lost and found is gargantuan, or at least it was. I'll talk about that in a bit. Excuse me, it's rather cold here in the morning. All right. Rendering with CP. I left off the U. Rendering with CPU. This little laptop of mine has an i5. It's a PC. It has an i5 8th generation. Not bad, but not great. I've had to render everything with that. It has the Intel UHD graphics, so it's not using the integrated graphics, and you probably wouldn't want to anyway. I don't have an NVIDIA card, so it's been slow going. But having said that, most renders that I'm doing are taking, if it's fresh and I don't have a lot of stuff in there and I'm just getting started in testing, they can render in 10-15 minutes. As I add things, usually the finished product generally takes around 2 to 3 hours, and that's with me setting some relatively high render settings, either at 1092 by 1080 or one step higher. I haven't gone up to 4K because my screen can't view it, or it isn't that resolution. I don't really see the point of the 4K right now unless I had a big huge 4K monitor. So the rendering has taken a long time, and it heats this thing up. As summer approaches, where in this car it can get to be 120 degrees, which is already life-threatening to me, and nobody in Minnesota cares about that at all. Not one bit. Even the National Weather Service doesn't care. But if this computer is going to run that hot through the summer, I'm going to have some problems. So I'm a little concerned about that in the future. This was through the winter where it was 20 below zero. So this thing could run hot, and all I really had to do was open the door and close the door, and this compartment in here that I live and sleep in goes from about, maybe 10 or 20 degrees above zero. Just by opening and closing the door, it drops a good 5 degrees. That's how quick it happens. All the air just sucks out and through the holes in the car. As I approach summer, I don't know what's going to happen, folks. I'm really worried it's going to just melt down my whole computer. So we'll have to see where that's going. So sorry, unless I put on my glasses here. Another thing with Daz that is bothering me is at the store, they isolate the customers from the vendors. The vendors are the ones doing all the work. I'll talk about this in another video, but in detail. The vendors are doing all the work. It's their creative efforts. It's because of what they do that we have the tools we need to do what we do. Daz puts this solid steel wall between us and them. So some code name for them, but that's it. You can't communicate with them. You can't write to the vendor and ask them questions. You can't make product suggestions. You can't just say, hey, I love what you're doing. And that has to suck for the vendors as well. I'm sure for all the work they do, they would like to hear their experiences from the customers. They'd like to hear customers say, I love all these hairs that you create. They're gorgeous. They're wonderful. Very easy to use. I'm sure the vendors would love to see what people are doing with their products. For Daz to put up that firewall there, again, you got to ask these questions. Why would a company do that? Why would a company push something that is basically a pyramid scheme? Why would you do that? Why would you put a firewall between customers and vendors? And this is where you start to see what Daz as a company is all about, and why I retracted my praise of them compared to Reillusion. I'm seeing them both as almost identical at this point. Let's see here. So I wish they did not isolate me from the vendors, because there's so much I could benefit from there. Questions I have for them. There's people who do wonderful things. I'd like to give them specific suggestions or requests, see if they can do it. And I would like to be able to praise them for what they're doing. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. I guess you get so used to buying music CDs and things that you know you'll never be able to contact, Rush and tell them, hey, I love your music. Thank you for what you did for 30 years, 40 years. It meant a lot to me. It's sad that you can't tell them that, but something like Rush, you can understand that. They have 100 million fans, hardcore fans around the world. But a Daz vendor, you're talking about several thousand people buying their products over time. There's really no excuse why we can't communicate with them. As we'll see in a moment, there is a way to do so. Daz Central, when I download the products, I think I mentioned this in the introduction video. When I download the products using Daz Central, you hit download or install. It downloads, but it can only go so far, maybe 30 megabytes. Megabytes. About 30 megabytes, and then it just stops. And you can either wait about 5 or 10 minutes and then do it again, and it'll take off where it left off, or you can exit Daz Central and restart the program and immediately take off from where you left off. That's ridiculous. As someone who grew up programming computers in the 1980s, that's offensive. You don't write computer programs that do that. That makes no rational sense. I don't know what Daz thinks they're doing there. Now, if I get to a faster connection, it might go up to more. It might go up to 60 megabytes or 100 megabytes before it crashes or stops. I think on the fastest internet I've been able to find, where I am, I have to find internet where I can. The fastest one I've ever found, it did get some pretty big files without stopping once. But almost everything I've downloaded from Daz, I've had to do in multiple parts. And some of the bigger ones, a gigabyte more for shaders or whatever, 20, 30 times I have to restart Daz Central to download that one product. Again, what is Daz thinking? That makes rational sense to them, or is there something else going on? Daz Install Manager, which a lot of people, old school Daz people seem to like. I tried it out. Again, it looked like a teenager wrote it. I would never create a user interface like that. It's the most tedious thing in the world. It gets the job done. It does have a nice feature in that it shows you the files and where they were installed. I'll grant you that, but personally, I can't deal with the pain of dim just to get that, because I know where to look for the files manually. So it's a shame. Daz Install Manager is close, but there's no cigar there. Let's see. Now, lastly on this topic, I'll say yesterday I did my first refund for all that stuff I bought at the Daz Store. And there, to be fair, there probably were some things in the past I might have tried to get a refund on. Not many, though. Again, I'm pretty proud of the shopping I've done. Not many at all. But I haven't felt pushed to it. This was an $8 hair. Beautiful hair in the pictures, but really hard to use, and a lot of it's because it was totally dependent on D-Force. And again, I just don't know enough about D-Force. I haven't learned that much about it yet. And rendering from the CPU, iRay and D-Force, the longest I've had a render take on this thing was about 3 days. And living in a car, I don't have any way to keep this computer running for 3 days. I can't. I have to go to work. I can't take my computer into work. I mean, I can't leave it in the car. That's just unacceptable. So I applied for a refund, and it was real painless. They put it in as store credit, and I immediately bought something else. But it's a shame. It was a beautiful hair. Maybe with a more powerful system, it wouldn't have been so bad. But that's the only refund I've done. But at least they did do it. I was a little worried they might say, well, you used a coupon. You can't, all of a sudden the exceptions and terms and conditions get thrown at you, and they don't refund it. But that's not what happened. They did, in fact, refund it. Sorry, I just opened up some side window and I don't know why or how to get rid of it. There goes my real estate. Let's see. Next, I'm going to go touch on Renderosity. I didn't really mention Renderosity in my intro video except to say that I wasn't a fan of their Prime. I like Daz Plus with the Daz Store, and I would still say, yeah, Daz Plus is definitely worth having. But as I've gotten to know Renderosity, one thing I didn't really think about was Prime at Renderosity is annual. So what you pay for 3 months at Daz, you pay for an annual Prime at Renderosity. That makes Prime a lot more palatable. I was thinking it was quarterly as well, what I was paying. So at this point, I would say Prime overall is worth it. It's not the extraordinary savings by any stretch that I get with Daz Plus, but it is worth it. But it can also be very frustrating. Now, Renderosity has a lot of problems too, but they're not offensive problems. With Daz, the problems they have are offensive because, again, things like pushing kind of thing. This NFT stuff. The things that Daz does are the things that a company that functions in an unethical manner would do. Let me put it that way. Renderosity, it just seems to be more like technical issues. I get the feeling they mean well. I don't see the kind of manipulative tactics and things to the same extent. I mean, there's a lot of marketing, obviously, but I don't see the same things I see at Daz. So I'm digging Renderosity more and more all the time, but there's other reasons for it. The price is generally the daily price at Renderosity is less than at the Daz Store, but they don't often have the kinds of bargain bin price sales that Daz has. Now, of course, at the Daz Store, you got to find those sales. You got to be there right when it happens to get it at that price. That's what I'm good at, and that's why I've gotten everything so cheap. At Renderosity, their sales are more like weekly or 10 days, which is probably better in the end, but their sales don't really go all that deep very often. So there's this trade-off here. Overall, I'm happy with Renderosity. I do feel like I'm paying a lot more money there, so I'm being a lot more cautious and I haven't bought nearly as much. But I'm digging Renderosity more all the time. Let me put these on here. The community, yeah, the community is the thing there. You can actually communicate with the vendors there. You can site mail them and get a response from them. They have comments, they have ratings and reviews. You can review the products. At the Daz Store, especially since Daz allows the main picture to be photoshopped at Daz. So the icon images when you're searching for stuff, that's not necessarily what you're going to get when you do a render. That could be totally photoshopped. They can do whatever they want with it. Well, if you buy that and you don't have reviews where people say, hey, this thing sucks, the real world doesn't look anything like their promo photos, or this has problems with such and such, you don't have any warning at the Daz Store. At Renderosity, if you look at the reviews, you have that kind of warning, and you can give that kind of warning, or the opposite, which, thank goodness, has been what I've pretty much done. I think there's only one thing I put in a review on where I had to mention a potential issue, and even then I encourage people to buy it. But everything else I have just said, hey, this works great, just letting you know. Works great in Daz 4.16. So having that community, I've managed to communicate with some of the vendors and some other wonderful people who have contacted me because maybe they liked what I was posting in my gallery and such. In the gallery too, the gallery where you can post renders that you're creating and have other people like them and comment on them. That's great. I mean, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel some satisfaction for what you're doing, but you also might get some good comments or constructive criticism. And they added a function recently where you can tip people. You can, put a few coins in their tip jar if you like their renders. And that's a great feature. The only problem is I feel bad because, I wish I was rich. I'd be tipping these people all over the place because they're, like Kansans with cows. I'd be tipping all over the place. The there's the renders here are just magnificent. I mean, I can't touch them. I can't come near what these people are doing. Uh, just the renders people are doing, they're very inspiring, and that's the thing. There's nothing like that on Daz or Daz Store. There's nothing to inspire you. At Renderosity, there's all kinds of inspiration. They also have contests, although it's rare, and unfortunately, Renderosity has moved their contest apparently to Facebook. And anybody who respects their privacy or their safety and security would never have anything to do with Facebook if you understand what Facebook is. I'm sorry if you're on Facebook, but you've done a bad thing. You've put you and your family at risk, and you really need to leave Facebook ASAP for your own security. I'm not going near Facebook, certainly not just for a contest. So I did take part in the pinup contest. I kind of caught it late. They actually had it going for about 2.5 months, which was a long time. But I didn't find out about it until it was almost over. So for me, it was like a 1 week thing. And of course, with work and just not knowing how to render, my submission wasn't the greatest in the world. But I did what I could. It was fun. The people who put entries in there, I learned so much from what they did. Just magnificent entries in there. Everyone did a great job. Some really clever stuff I never would have thought of. There were these, I don't know what you call them, stickmen maybe, I guess, but just kind of roly-poly Michelin man type. Like you would find the posing dolls in a arts and crafts store. Those kinds of things. The one person had one like sitting in a wine glass, and you could see their body being flattened against the glass, and it was like, wow, this is just really neat. There's some really interesting stuff in here. And then Jetsons, was it Jane? Jane, right? Is that the wife? Jane Jetson, sitting in her bed with the little spaceports outside. I mean, just a bunch of really cool stuff. So I had fun doing the pinup contest. I wish I'd had a little more time. I didn't even have time to render the thing all the way, so it was kind of fuzzy. So I didn't win the pinup contest. But how could I expect? It was my first entry when I'm learning. Through Renderosity, I've heard things about Hivewire, I believe it is. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it looks really interesting. I guess they used to have a store, but they don't now. But they still have forums. So again, I don't have enough internet access to really participate in these the way I want to. But Hivewire looks like it's pretty cool, and I think they have a community going there as well. So if you're on the Daz and you're on Daz Store and you don't know about these other places, a whole new world will open up for you at Renderosity at least, perhaps at Hivewire as well, just from the community. You can get questions answered. You can just have fun chatting back and forth. You can see what they're doing and marvel at their creativity. They can see what you're doing. It's really, really vastly superior to the Daz Store. It's a whole different world, literally. The Daz Store just seems like something behind the Iron Curtain, and then Renderosity's kind of like Las Vegas. It's just totally different, more fun. Renderosity also has a lot of free stuff. And when I say free stuff, I don't mean like Daz Store free stuff where, oh, you're a Daz Plus member? Here's a free texture for a Genesis 2 character. Free. Don't have to pay for it. Of course, you have to buy the original character for Genesis 2 if you want to get any use out of this texture, and Genesis 2 is ancient. But it's free. Hey, you're a Daz Plus member. Renderosity, no. The vendors themselves decide what they're going to give you for free. And bless their hearts, some of them, many of them, are putting out free content there that is superior to a lot of what I bought at the Daz Store. Thank you so much to all of you who are doing this. Wow, I don't even know where to go with that. The amount of free stuff I've gotten at Renderosity starts to approach how much I bought at the Daz Store, and it's good stuff. So definitely check that out. Um, let's see. Renderosity has a reward system, so when you buy, you earn points, and if you're a Prime member, you get a couple extra points. So when you leave a review for a product, you get some points. When you post a render to your gallery, you get a few points. So as you build these points, you can trade them in for gift cards for like $5 or $10. And I've probably accumulated at least $30, maybe $40 worth of points in the last 6 months through there. That's $30, $40. I can buy stuff. And I just cashed in a bunch of them when they had a big sale. Well, it's 50% off sale, but I monitored the items when they go on sale, and there were some that just never had gone on sale. So here they were. They finally were on sale, and I had some points for them. So I really cleaned up at Renderosity like never before about a week or two ago when they had their end of March Madness sale or whatever. We've gone mad! With the chain around there. Also, Renderosity has a lot more stuff that gets off the beaten path, to say the least. Especially if you're heading off in the risque direction, I guess you'd say. But Renderosity has some really cool stuff, and you just won't find anything remotely like that on the Daz Store. The Daz Store is very prim and proper, and it just seems so controlled. Renderosity does not seem like a free-for-all, which is good. You don't want that, but it seems free in the sense of people are free as long as, they're not ridiculous about it and they follow the rules. They can kind of upload whatever you want, so which is nice. For example, I think it was, I hope I'm right, Second World, they had something called bad stuff. Bad stuff is a bunch of drugs. So you got all these pills, you've got a crack pipe, you've got cocaine in bags, cocaine lines. You've got all this stuff. Well, what a godsend for me, folks. I mean, on my homeless consultant channel about 2 years ago, I did a video called Let's Talk About Drugs. Okay, I'm very anti-drug, by the way. I'm just going to say it right now. Sorry, that's not going to change. Mind-altering things are bad for you because your mind is what you are. Your mind is who you are. Therefore, a mind-altering substance alters who you are. That's why someone who starts huffing paint cans can go on international television and say, "It's like I'm walking on sunshine," and her parents think that they're going to get their child back. Their child is dead. Their child is gone. Okay, drugs are bad. Well, in the video, I don't have anything to illustrate that, right? And I was planning, and I am still planning to do another version of this, given the death of Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters, who had most of the drugs on planet Earth in his hotel room at the time, and everybody's praising the man. So I'm a little disturbed about that. Daz Store would never have something like that. Renderosity had it. Thank you. Now I have something I can use for illustrations for something like that. I mean, you've got to look at the world the way it really truly is. Now, there's still a lot of things that aren't there, but I'll save that for another video to talk about. But I like Renderosity a lot. It doesn't have as much stuff, but what it has is generally really good and very different. For heaven's sakes, folks, I got a Boeing 737 on Renderosity with the cockpit. I mean, I study aviation and aviation safety. I don't do video games and things. I've toyed with flight simulators, but I just don't have time, and I can't do it. And I never really could in the past. I wish I did. I wish I could. But I know the 737 pretty well. So as soon as I looked at it, I immediately looked up top for the autopilot, and I was like, oh yeah, you sexy thing. That's the nicest autopilot in the world. Beautiful model of an entire 737, folks. Oh my goodness, there's so much I want to do with this stuff. Wow, they even had an airport. You could buy the whole airport. Oh, just wonderful. And I've just not seen that stuff on Daz. Daz, they have the Tune plane, which is cool. It's a nice little Cessna type thing. I want to get that someday, but wow, a 737. Holy moly. Sorry, I got to put on eyes here. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. Well, I guess that's it for Renderosity. All right, let's move on to what I have learned. And again, I'm leaving out a lot of stuff. I think you know, if you've done this yourself, you're aware. But just to give you an idea of versus 6 months ago when I first looked at Daz, and I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. Look at all these windows, these panes. Oh, how am I ever going to figure out how this works? Well, like I said, I've learned how to shop the Daz Store and Renderosity. And that is mainly from experience, but mainly because of my experience shopping similar things for music for the last 20 years. I'll create videos on that. In fact, I created a 3-part masterclass on shopping the Daz Store, but it's gone now, as you'll see. Render settings. Okay, now I have a background in photography as well, so I understand, not as well as a photographer should, but I've done a lot of photography, and one of the few things I was able to keep when I lost my home and everything else was my digital SLR, mainly because it's one of the original ones, so pawn shop would only give you $20 for it, but it's a digital SLR with a Nikon. So I know about photography to the extent of focal length, f-stop, things like that, depth of field. The idea that the render settings and then in Daz Studio you can set those things is magnificent. The creative possibilities there are tremendous. If you're not going there, I highly urge you to go on YouTube, look up a couple tutorial classes on photography to learn about depth of field, f-stops, all that, lenses. Is when you listen to that, you're going to recognize what's going on with Daz, and you're going to realize you have a lot of power under the hood there to really give creative control over your how you present your scenes. Posing. I've gotten a lot better at posing. I mean, I don't feel it's as tedious anymore. At first, it was just like, ugh. Especially when you're in the viewport, unless you're on like a cartoon shader or something, you move the mouse and then you move the mouse and then that was good. And then the thing moves on the viewport. There's a little bit of lag there, let me put it that way. Very frustrating, especially if you're posing. Sometimes you get a case where, for example, you click on a hand, you move the hand from here to there. Not only is there a delay, but it'll move, and then a couple seconds later, it'll move yet again. And then the second time, the whole body moves with it, and you're just, oh. I've gotten a lot better at posing, so I don't suffer from those kinds of issues as much anymore. I haven't really mastered it. I haven't mastered pinning. I've got to do that. That's going to help a lot. I've done some pinning, and it does help. But gestures and expressions. One of the best purchases I've made is just a simple hand gestures for men and women. I use that all the time because you can usually find a gesture that's close to what you're looking for, and then I've really learned well how to start manipulating these digits, index 1, 2, 3, to straighten out a finger or to bend it, and it's important to have a reference photo or to have a reference around so that you can watch it, make sure that a real hand can do that. Same thing with expressions. Poses, expressions, and gestures are something I've kind of neglected. I'm fortunate that I've got some good ones already in my collection, but that's probably where I'll go next to get more of that kind of thing. But I've learned how to do the posing. Power pose was a huge godsend for me when one of those videos I watched, tutorial videos, I can't remember her name. It was a woman who did the video, very helpful, and she brought up the power pose, and wow, that thing's been really useful, really, really useful. Various forms of lighting, point light, spotlight. Again, I have some background in that, and of course, with the videos I do, not just here, but I've done videos for years, so translating that into Daz has been really tough, though. I've had a lot of trouble with lighting, and I know lighting, so it's not the lighting that's causing me trouble, it's manipulating the lighting tools. And to be honest, that's something I need to improve on. But I've come a long way. And thank goodness, because otherwise I'd have a lot of really dark renders. Applying shaders to surfaces. Wow, that was another eye-opener. Once I realized I could take a leather shader and apply it to a car, I was like, oh, this is cool. This is really cool. I like this. And then I started buying shaders. At the Daz Store, you can get them for $1 quite often. Let me just check the clock here because I do have to go to work. Okay, I got some time. Let's see. I'm so sorry, folks. I'm used to being back further. It's with the lazy eye. It's hard to see. I can only see if I look through one eye at a time. I'm trying not to freak you out with the lazy eye here. Customizing items. Originally I was in my master class. I was saying that you can't really customize much, but I have found that that's not the case. It's just really difficult to customize things. You have to go in and find the right mat files. I'm still learning the technology here, the material files. You have to go in and find the right file and manipulate it. But for example, if you have a t-shirt or a surface and you want to put some writing on it, in many cases, if you dig around enough over in the materials pane and you find, and I still don't quite understand, they have base and displacement, all these maps and things. I don't understand that at all, and I've looked for good explanations and they're hard to find. I'm sure they're out there, but again, that's something, if I learn that, I'm going to give it to you and I'm going to lay it out point by point, because no one should have to enter this world and just be completely lost on this material stuff. It just isn't right, and I don't know why someone hasn't put out a truly clear, crystal clear explanation for what's going on with these. But if you dig around in there long enough, you can find files that you can go in and manipulate. Probably the best example would be at Renderosity. I bought the action figure box. Just, again, fun stuff you don't see at the Daz Store. That is one of the coolest things ever. I mean, I created a homeless consultant action figure. You could send in for a mail-in rebate to get a free steering wheel, but civil rights were not included. I mean, it was just awesome, right? Now, one of my weaknesses, I'm not good at all with Photoshop. In fact, I don't use Photoshop. I won't touch Adobe since they went to subscriptions. Adobe, I threw out all my Adobe stuff at that point. That's offensive. That's manipulative. It's exploiting people. And that's ethically wrong from a business standpoint. So I dumped Adobe forever. Like dumping Disney, and there's so many companies I've had to dump. And I hope Daz doesn't go so far that I have to dump them, or I'm gonna have to start all over with another brand here. But yeah, the not knowing how to Photoshop and not having any drawing skills is a big weakness for me. But having said that, I use Paint Shop Pro version 7, which is back when Jask created Paint Shop Pro. Fantastic program to this day. The thing's probably 15 years old. Now, that was bought by Serif, and then they jazzed it up, and now the new incarnation of that series is called Affinity Photo, and then they have Affinity Publisher and everything. So I have Affinity Photo and I have the old Jask. I still find myself using Paint Shop Pro most of the time. It's really fast and I know where everything is, or at least everything I know how to do in it. But if I can get into that action figure box and really do the artwork the way I want to, I created a figure of me, and oh my goodness, how much fun is that? So that's highly customizable, but they advertise it as customizable. But there's other things where you can't. So for example, with oh, I don't remember where I got it. I think it was Renderosity. I think it was the smoking paraphernalia one. It was the one that I've gotten some other ones that have cigarette packs in them, but they always, I guess to avoid trademark problems, they give them other names like Cowboy or something. One of them's called Royal, but it's obviously a Marlboro pack. Well, I want to do things from the real world, so one of them had something close. It said Marlboro, Marlbaro. So I found where that file was. I brought it up in Paint Shop and I copied over the O, and on all the different surfaces, the side and everything, I replaced that A with an O, and I saved it as a new one, and then I went and loaded it in the materials, and lo and behold, I had a pack of Marlboros, exactly what you would want. So that was not advertised that you could do that. So from that, I've gone into some other things, and I've realized that with a lot of these, you can go in with a lot of the files and manipulate them yourself. It's just incredibly tedious. On the other hand, there's some things that are meant to be manipulated, like Gray Bros t-shirts and jerseys on Renderosity. Those are set up with templates for you to go in and customize the t-shirts. Daz Store has one called, I think, Message Me or Message something or other, and I have that, but I haven't really had a chance to use it. But that also works for tank tops, for t-shirts, for baseball caps, where you can customize them. And that is a great and wonderful thing, because if you can't customize them, it's hard to personalize what you're doing. So this customization thing is something I spent a lot of time digging deep into, rather than focusing on finished results at this time. It's more of a learning process. So between shaders and the ability to customize in that manner, I'm seeing some real potential here to venture. That's where you start to diverge from all these other people. And that's where you can create something that's uniquely your own. I mean, I can tell already at Renderosity, I've only uploaded 5 or 6 renders to the gallery. And I can already tell there's something unique about what I'm doing versus what other people are doing. Not better, not worse, but just unique. And that's nice. I like it. When I look at other people's stuff, I'm just like, my gosh, that is so beautiful. How did you do that? I just marvel at what they're doing. So it's not like what I'm doing is better at all, but I can tell this person has this style, and you go to mine, and I can tell, okay, this is what I'm doing. And that's neat. That's what I like. You want to develop your own style, just like Norman Rockwell type artwork is different than Picasso. I like humor. I like real world scenes. I like scenes that are kind of heartwarming, Norman Rockwell kind of things. I like scenes that have a lot of hidden meaning that you really should look at more closely than you are looking at them and see what's really there. I like memes. Those are the kinds of things I like. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on so far. Let's see. Let me move on here. Oh, yeah. So, since I've started doing this over the last 6 months, um, I found myself like talking to people about it. I'll even, especially with hair, I just love hair. So I'll see people with hair. There was one woman in my workplace, doesn't work where I work, but in a different business there. And I went up to her and I just said, "Do you know what they call your hairstyle?" It's got to be the weirdest question she's ever had. And she said, "Well, I cut it myself." I was like, "Really?" Because it was this magnificent kind of bob, but it curled outward like those 50s things, but it was a modern bob. And I was just like, and it was just a little messy. And I said, "Well, I love your hair. I love it. I'm trying to learn 3D modeling. I'd love to be able to model that hair, but I need to know what it's called to have any hope of finding something similar." She said, "I don't know. Just look up inverted bob." And I never did find it under inverted bob. But I mean, isn't that weird? I'm going up asking people what their hairstyle is called. Now, see, if she was a quick wit, she would have said, "Arthur." What do you call that hairstyle? Arthur. If you get that joke, you're a Beatles fan, and I love you. Um, if you don't get the joke, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. Oh, let's see what else here. So I find myself studying people watching in a different way than I did before. But also another really interesting thing is when events happen around me, if I see something interesting happen, and I've always noticed that, especially living in the car. Like I said, I have to watch everything around me like a hawk for my own safety. So events and things like the drug deals that I see going on in parking lots and things, I see all the details of this. But I'm starting to see just little simple things that go on in life, and then I find myself going to Daz and trying to recreate it. You know, there was outside Hobby Lobby. Okay, so I was just driving past Hobby Lobby. I wasn't going in that day. I like Hobby Lobby, but I was just driving past it. And I just glance over, and I swear, people, I'm not kidding. I probably had my head turned for between point 0.5 and 1 second, and that's it. And in that time, what I saw was two women sitting on the, the concrete, whatever, the little things that you sit on made out of concrete, right? Out there having a smoke break. One of them had long, straight, gray hair. Absolutely gorgeous hair. And, by the time I passed, I only saw this person for half a second to 1 second. And I probably spent 20 hours in Daz trying to recreate at least what I thought I saw. The situation where they were sitting and her hair. I didn't have enough time to really identify the face. I had a very, very vague idea of the face. That where we had to get the cigarette from for that, all that stuff, and that was really fun. And that actually became one of my favorite characters that I've created. Um, so, and I've seen that at other things. I see something going on in the world, and I'll go to Daz and try to recreate that scene. It's like a practice, but sometimes something comes out of it, like a new character. So, an idea for you if you don't already do that, but maybe you experience the same thing. I haven't had a chance to really use what I'm doing yet. About the only instance I've had is the last video I put up at the Homeless Consultant, which was a very quick, humorous take on the Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars. So I used a newsroom that I got for like $5 at Renderosity, and I used the model of me as the anchor man, and I just did this, joke about the Dean Martin celebrity roast of Will Smith has been canceled. And I did my best Foster Brooks drunk impression. it was it was a fun video, but I didn't put as much. You can tell from the renders, I didn't put as much time into that as I could have. It's mainly because I can't do anything fast living in a car, so I wasn't going to be able to get it up to the kind of quality I wanted quickly. So I thought, well, if I stop right now, it has a cheese factor that makes up for that. If I go somewhere in between, it's going to look like I'm just not very good at what I'm doing. So I'll just leave it at the cheese factor. But that's about the only thing I've actually done with this stuff so far that I've actually put out there in front of people. Let's see here. Now, in terms of weaknesses, I'm still very weak, like I said, on the lighting. It's not lighting per se that's my weakness. I understand lighting very well, but it's using the tools in Daz. I'm not getting a lot of good tutorials on how to move a spotlight, how to know where the spotlight really truly is pointed. Some of these lights, it seems like when you create them, if you copy them to the current view, current camera or what have you, it just is there. And then you switch to that light, and then it's right where you think it is, and you can move it around. But other ones, it seems like when you do that, when you move the viewport around, it's not actually moving the light, and I'm just totally lost on this. So lighting has been a nightmare, but I can tell already it's a problem for everybody. But it's crucial. I mean, photography means painting with light, and what we're essentially doing here is, photographs, images. Materials and shaders. I'm getting better at this. Like I said, I told you about that already, but I need a lot of work. I just don't understand why there isn't something that really clearly identifies what are all these mats, base, displacement. I see people in the forums just throwing these words out left and right, and I think, do you honestly believe everybody who's reading these knows what you're talking about? I mean, I don't know if people are trying to look cool by throwing these terms out, or if they honestly think everyone else understands what they're saying. But when you're speaking, please, if you're going to be in the forums talking about these things, have a heart for people who are new. Because as they read that, you're just flying right over their heads. At least put a reference at the end and say, well, go over here to learn what a displacement map is or something. Because it's just very frustrating to see these terms thrown around, Even when I'm in music, when I'm dealing with music stuff, I know the terminology in and out, and yeah, I could easily start using that terminology and fly over people's heads, but I'm usually conscious if I'm talking to somebody who is new to guitar, for example. If I start talking about something that's technical, I'll know it and I'll stop and explain to them what that technical term means. Because if I don't, what I just said has no meaning to them. Um, Scripts. I'm pretty familiar with scripts as well. I mean, my background's computer programming, but I don't know the script language they're using here, and I haven't really had a chance to use them, but I can't figure out how to get the scripts even accessible. The install manager, Daz Central, just when you look up at scripts in the menu next to where I have the favorites, I figured out how to put favorites up there. Although it's weird, you can't delete favorites that I can tell. I mean, the favorite section should be like a bookmark. You should be able to go in and edit it and change their order, delete, add. But it looks to me like you can only add favorites and you can't even delete them. Very, very strange. But in the scripts, I've only got one up there, and it's something that Daz put there. And apparently, I've got all these other scripts that I bought all over the place, and I don't know where they are or how to run them or anything. I don't know. There's just nothing to teach me how. This one's big, saving characters as real characters. When I made that character of myself, I used face transfer on a Genesis 8 base male. And then I had the face transfer, what do you call it? It's like an add-on shapes to kind of fix the profile a little bit, flesh out the profile. Well, I was really happy with the way that came out, all things considered, that I was using a poor camera in not the greatest lighting, holding the camera like a selfie, because when you do that, you're stretching all your muscles here. When you stretch your hand out for a selfie, your face doesn't look normal because you're stretching it by the act of moving your arm out like that. So you really need someone else to take the picture so you can truly relax. And I was happy with how it came out, but how do I save it as a character? And by that I mean like a character you would buy at Renderosity or at the Daz Store. When you buy a character there, whether it's a base character or something you apply, you install it and then it shows up with an icon and you just double click on it and bam, there it is. Exactly as you expected. But for some reason mine doesn't do that. It either loses part of the face transfer or if I'm modifying other characters like this gray-haired lady that I created, which just turned out to be this just beautiful older woman with this hair. I really like the character I came up with there, and I don't know how to save it as a character. So I have to save it as a scene and then merge it with whatever I'm working on, and that's really tedious. One thing I don't understand after 6 months, the vendors who make these products, I don't understand how you ever learned how to create the files, how to save files like this in the proper format. How did you learn to bundle them in such a way that they would install properly? Some of these characters have files all over the place, maybe 50, 200 files. If you're creating all these files as a vendor, presumably you have some idea of what they are and what they do. But there's nobody telling us that. They're just 50 or 200 files, and I don't have the foggiest idea what they're for. How did you learn this as a vendor when there's no training, there's no manual, there's nothing that I can find at Daz that teaches you how to do any of this? I bought a couple tutorials. I paid money for tutorials from vendors that kind of claim to tell you how to do this, but they never tell you how to do it. They never go all the way and tell you step by step. They'll focus more on creating the character than how to save it in the exact manner that you do when you're selling it. Please, somebody tell us. Because as I'm creating all these characters, I want to save them. I don't want to save them all as scenes. For one thing, it clutters up. When I go searching in smart content elsewhere, these scenes suddenly show up in the icon list. And I don't want everything I render to show up in there. That's a waste of space. Those are finished products. They're not supposed to be in there as content. Those are finished products. I should render it and That's that. But instead I render it and all of a sudden it's there in my list of characters or my list of environments. And it's just taking up space and making it harder to find the stuff I'm looking for. Please, somebody tell us how to do this. Um, as I said before, in the meantime, in the last 6 months, Daz has released version 4.20. And the big focus there is some kind of an iRay upgrade, although it doesn't sound like it's a lot. But these volumetrics. Take a sip here. Volumetrics. I have no idea what that is. I mean, well, okay, I have some idea of what it may be. It's kind of like when I was trying to, and I still have to, particles. I have to look into particles more too. Particle spray, instancing. Those are other weaknesses that I'm working on improving. But the only thing that's volumetric that I have right now are the flames. I got one set of flames, Pyromantics, I think, from Daz Store. And they're pretty cool. I made one render series that was so fantastic. You're gonna see why I'm almost crying as I say this in a moment. Wow, with the flames. But it's supposed to make clouds, that kind of smoke, rocket exhaust, these kinds of things that are apparently that take up a volume in space, but not necessarily like a primitive object, more complex, maybe even morphing and moving as you would expect it to. So for example, in that one render I was doing, it had something in motion that was on fire. And I couldn't figure out how to get the flames and the smoke to blow back the way they should with the wind. So perhaps this 420. Speaking of drugs, maybe that's what's going on at Daz. This 4.20 release with volumetrics, I think that kind of gets into what I'm talking about along with wind. I haven't figured out how the wind works. D-force is another thing. D-force just sails right over my head. Anytime I've tried to do a simulation, it always explodes. It takes 10 times longer than a render. On this computer, with me in a car where I can't just leave this thing running when I go to work, I can't use D-force. It just takes too long. I can't do anything with it. It's useless to me. I can see that there's a lot of power there, but I don't know how to use it. But anyway, with the volumetrics, that seems to be what it is smoke, clouds, fogs, things that take up volume that changes in space, I think. Flames, things like that. Let me see here. What else do I have? Yeah, another thing, just like I am shocked that nobody can tell us clearly, not here's how I do it or here's how I think you do it, but just here's how it's done, such as a specification. See, in my background in business and in technical issues in computer science, you have specifications. That's where you get standards and consistency. I don't see that from Daz. I don't see where they have a specification and they say, if you're going to create a character, here's how you save it. Here's how it's saved. These are the files that are needed. These are optional. Here's where they go. Here's how the installer works. Here's what you provide to us and we will sell it for you. I don't see where they have that. They might, but I don't see where they have it. Well, likewise, their file structure. Where did this, what is that, lost and found? Where did this lost and found and all of these files that don't work, where'd they come from? Daz doesn't tell you what their own file structure is. They don't tell you that the runtime is the one you don't mess with. But apparently you can do some manipulation with the other folders. Now, how much manipulation can you do? I don't know. I could damage something badly if I do something to the wrong thing. There's nobody telling you any of this. Again, it's like Daz created the studio as an afterthought, just as a vehicle for selling content. And other than a new release once in a while where they had some features like the volumetrics, they don't seem to really care about the product itself, which just blows my mind. I don't understand their file structure. So Um, I am now, due to circumstances beyond my control, as you'll see in a moment, I am redoing all this, and I'm going to do everything I can to figure out what this structure really is and to share it with you if I can figure it out, because no one else seems to be doing that. Let's see here. So as far as the videos online, there's been quite a few that have been useful. Parmy has made a lot of videos that I find useful. He's very quick and to the point. I'm not. I'm much more verbose. He just kind of gets right in and gives it to you, and I appreciate it. IT Roy, WP Guru, there's a lot of others who've made videos that I've found interesting, but I hope to contribute some of those, because the best way to learn is to teach. I've always learned that way, no matter what it is. Back in school, when I was learning calculus and all that, I would create tutorials. That's how I learned it. If I didn't do that, I just didn't feel confident I'd mastered it. So that's how I'm trying to approach this, and that's why I created this channel. So eventually I can share those with you. But I did want to point out the two best videos I found, oddly enough, on YouTube were actually created by the vendors. They were companions to teach you how to use their product. One of them is from Daz Store, the Electric Guitar Collection. This is the one that has the Flying V and the Stratocaster and the Explorer and all the poses, like Eddie Van Halen jump and things like that. The AC/DC, with the way he squats down. The woman who made that, I'm so sorry, I don't remember her name or the name of her channel right now, but I watched the video. She had two on that. One told you how to work the guitar collection. The other one told how to work the guitar strap specifically, because you got to really route that thing in a posing sense to get it around your body and attached to the guitar. Watching that video is actually what sold me on buying the product. I wasn't sure about buying the product at first, because I know guitars real well, and there was no Les Paul in there, and I just wasn't sure if I wanted to get it. When I watched her tutorial, first of all, she sold me on the product. Spectacular product. There's so much you can do with that electric guitar collection I never knew from the description. I mean, it's incredibly versatile. Wonderful, wonderful product. But also, just she was so good at explaining exactly how to make all that happen. I hit the ground running. The first time I tried it, it went just the way I wanted, because her tutorial was so good. And I learned a lot about other things. Now, she did talk over my head a few times, just a few. She referred to the layer editor. I think she called it the Lee editor. And she never explained, oh, the Lee editor is, or the Lie editor, I think she called it. It's the layer editor, layer, I don't know what LELI, what it stands for. Eventually I figured out what it was and how to get at it, although I don't know how to do anything with it, but it looks cool. And one day I will. But I had no idea that thing even existed. I got it from watching her show how to customize these guitars. Now, I couldn't really see what she was doing. She was moving a little fast, but it was a great video. I learned a lot from the video, and she sold me on the product. I wish she'd put out more tutorials. Thank you for that product, by the way. Wonderful. See, at Daz Store, if I could communicate with the vendors, this is one person I would have written to and said, wow, I am so impressed with your product. Thank you so much. And then she would know, and she might continue making those kinds of products. But Daz Store puts up a firewall, so you can't do that. It's a shame. The other one is Gray Bro. Again, Gray Bro makes the graphic t-shirt for men and for women and the jerseys. And he also put up a pretty good video that basically had me hitting the ground running with the t-shirt to create my own custom t-shirt just with some text on it. You can also put graphics. So again, those are the two best videos I've seen, because they were right to the point. They were for a specific product, and I could take what they did. It was visible enough. The video was clear enough. But some people making these videos, their mouse is flying all over the place, and they're assuming that the people watching know what they know. And for one thing, I don't know how your system's set up, so I don't know what in the world you're clicking on. And you've got to explain every detail. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Please, if you're making tutorial videos for Daz, assume that everybody is new. or put something like intermediate or expert in the title. But if you're just going to fly around the screen and click your mouse here and there and use abbreviations, like lie editor, you've got to at least explain your terms so people know what's going on. But having said that, though, those 2 videos were the best I've seen. They sold me on the products, and they taught me a lot of good things. So beyond that, I've been developing a method, and I've got a pretty good method down now. Part of it involves a spreadsheet. I keep a spreadsheet of everything I buy with all the details on the spreadsheet, the main photo. It's kind of like a mini database that I've created on my computer. And that is so that I'll have quicker access to discover, what is it I have. If I create something, I'm just fiddling around looking for a character, and I say, hey, I really like this, but I can't remember, was this Genesis 8 or Genesis 3, or, I can go to my spreadsheet and find out. So all the information I need about the products is there. I can search and sort them to find out what add-ons I have not bought and I need to get. There's a lot of reasons. I'll do another video on that later. The content and file management, again, as a computer program, I am one of my mentors once told me, here's how you evaluate your employees and what's going on. If you own the company and your family's well-being, putting food on their table depended on that employee, would you hire them? And if you hire people, even though you don't own the company, if you hire people who meet that standard, you're going to have a pretty good crew. The people who programmed Daz, I mean, the program is spectacular. It's incredibly powerful. It has all kinds of features hidden. Daz Studio is an amazing piece of computer engineering in one sense, but at the same time, it's equally a complete fiasco. The fact that you install things and they just don't work. Products that they sell, that's lunacy. It's immoral. I think it's illegal. I mean, it's just wrong. It's dumb. It's if I owned the company, those people would be gone, and that problem would be fixed once and for all, forever. There's no way in the world I would want my name associated with a piece of software that creates the kind of file system that Daz does, where things are just all over the place, and if you want to find a scene of a lake, you go and look under wardrobe. I mean, if my employee came to me and said, here you go, how do you like it? I would say, you're fired. Bye-bye. And I would go find someone who knows what they're doing. This is lunacy, people. And one of the things that amazes me the most is how everybody associated with Daz at the forums and things, they just take this in stride like it's normal. They just accept it like, well, that's the way Daz is. And it's like, folks, that's where we get politicians who are destroying everything because people are complacent and they just say, well, what you gonna do about it? That's the way it is. This is inexcusable. The file system installing content that you paid for that doesn't work, it's absolutely positively inexcusable. So I'm trying to figure out how that works and trying to find a solution to the best of my ability as a computer programmer and as someone who has background in document control and all kinds of things. I'm just offended to the core of my being by the way that this file system's set up. And the fact that Daz never tells you what their file structure is and what the files do, again, is just offensive. I gotta check the clock here. Wow, I gotta get ready for work. Rendering workflow. I've come up with a pretty smooth workflow for rendering. I do quick renders to see what's going on. I add a certain thing, lighting, test it. I've gotten some, a smooth flow there. And using favorites. I've figured out how to right click and create a favorite, just like you can add a script, I finally figured out. But again, you can't seem to edit the favorite list. It should be like the bookmarks in your browser. You should be able to edit it, at least delete it, because what if you get something that's more favorite and you want to get rid of the old one? I don't see how you can do that. Like I said, I created a 3-part masterclass in shopping the Daz Store, but it's going to be a while for you to see it. And through it all, I've discovered my favorite characters that I've purchased, favorite environments, favorite hairs, all those things. It's just funny how I will zero in on this, but someone who's into fantasy and sci-fi, they're going to focus on that. But there's certain things I just keep coming back to over and over I really like. Um, I'm not saying them specifically here because I'll probably do a video later where I talk about that and have you talk about yours. So that brings me to the last point here I have to tell you about my experience. 6 months. Folks, I live in a car, and one thing I can't do that I could do my entire life up until then is maintain a proper backup schedule on this computer. A backup for a backup for my system to do it properly, I always keep 2 backups for redundancy. So if I were to back up this hard drive, I would back it up onto 2 hard drives. Okay, I don't leave it to chance. What if something happens to one? What if you have a bum drive? This is important. So I have already a case full of hard drives for backing up other hard drives. I have another laptop and I have a desktop in storage. So I know how to keep backups. The problem is when my computer died almost a year ago, thanks to Microsoft and iLock, I replaced it with a SSD drive. I got it up and running. I started using Daz at Thanksgiving. And by January, I was at the point where I'm like, I need to get my backup regimen for this computer, and I got to do it fast. But that's when the gas prices and the inflation really hit. And what happened was I go to work, I get a paycheck, and my expenses are larger than that paycheck. So I've actually had to dwindle away almost all my savings over the last 3 months. One of the things I was going to do in January was get those 2 hard drives and begin the proper backup schedule on this. Now, one reason I didn't do it early on was because it takes a good 6 months to install everything on this computer, on my computers. I have a whole music studio here. Installing all those synthesizers, getting them where they need to be, takes about 6 months. And I usually wait till it's all installed before I do a backup. That was around January. I mean, it was a little earlier, but January-ish. That's when I wanted to start backing up this thing in earnest, regularly. But then I couldn't afford it because of the gas prices and everything. I have to burn $20 to $30 a day in gasoline for a car that doesn't even move to try to stay alive, to try to generate heat when the heater doesn't work. It just took all my money. I mean, I don't earn enough money to pay my expenses, food and everything. So I couldn't obviously get hard drives. So it was coming up on where I had managed to kind of finally save up enough. It was right about now, or maybe 2-3 weeks beyond right now, when I was finally going to have those hard drives. Now, to do it, I have to take, like a vacation day, and I have to get a hotel room because I have to have all my gear set up so that I do the backups properly and I document everything, and so that I have good clean power to make sure there's no power interruption. You don't want that when you're doing a backup. In this car, the power can be interrupted any time. It's plugged into a cigarette lighter in an engine that barely works. All right, and then I have to keep moving because these people are always molesting and accosting homeless people in Minnesota. So I have to be in a hotel. So it's a huge expense for me to begin the backup regimen on this. It's probably about $500 total, maybe $600 for 2 hard drives, the hotel, all that stuff. I was about to do it. I was close. I was within a month of finally doing it. The SSD failed last week. And with that, I lost everything I've done over the last year. Since Microsoft and iLock destroyed my computer the last time, which was in May of last year. This is April of this year. I lost my entire music studio again. I lost every bit of music I've created since then. I lost everything for the Homeless Consultant channel that I've done, including a whole bunch of finished, well, a whole bunch, about 4 finished videos, which were really good too. I put a lot of work into those. I mean, these were true homeless consultant videos, not just kind of current events videos, explaining and documenting and charts and graphs and all that. They're gone. All the raw video I filmed for that is gone. And like I said, my video camera is dead now because the everything gets wadded up in this car. The power supply is dead for the camera. My headphones, my headphone monitors, I have professional headphone monitors. The cable shorted out. Everything that has a cable in this car gets shorted out. So what I did was I put or when I put Daz on the computer, that creates a problem because you're putting a whole new system on the computer. So basically, like a third of my drive is taken up with the music studio. With Daz, I had all this content. I mean, a lot, like 200 gigabytes worth of content of Daz stuff in there. But I also had all these hundreds of renders I've done, and they included things like series. I don't even want to think about it. Some of the things I did, I loved so much. I don't even want to talk about them. These were just beautiful, like I said, like Norman Rockwell kind of things. I was really proud of them, and I was really anxious to present them to you here, and they're gone. And this was a physical SSD crash, most likely because you'll probably hear a beep, because I have to power this laptop with this converter plugged into the lighter. Okay? When you run a car 24 hours a day for 7 years, the engine isn't very good. The alternator has oil leaking on it. This engine revs up and down all the time. It overheats. The power coming out of here is not very clean. It's not like a regulated power supply I had when I had a home for my desktop computer and laptop. It physically did something to the SSD. Now, if I had $500 to spare, I guess I could go buy a surface mount soldering workstation. I could take the SSD apart and I could probably fix it. But you got to have a microscope, you got to have a soldering iron with a small tip for surface mount parts, the tweezers, and it's been 25 years since I did surface mount electronics. So for what it's worth, it's just gone. I don't have any feasible way to do it. So there goes my 3-part masterclass in shopping the Daz Store, which I recorded 5 times for you folks. This was like a 6-hour series, 3 parts, about 2 hours each. It was about 5 hours total. I recorded that whole thing 5 times for you because I wanted it to be right, and it's gone. And I think the worst part is, the reason I'm in this car, you might be wondering, hey, Paul, you don't look like a drunk, you don't look like a drug addict, you don't look like you're crazy, hopefully. You don't look like a homeless person. Well, that's because you're only seeing thousands of homeless people when there's millions that you don't see because they're like me. They work at jobs, they are sane, sober. You're seeing the television version of homeless people, which is the crazy schizophrenic with a bottle and a needle. But the reality is quite different. Most homeless people are like me. We just don't have a home, but we have everything else. We have our minds, we have our skills, but something's preventing it. And there's a bunch of things in my case. One of them is I have no family whatsoever. So when my disaster happened, I had nobody to lean on, and I was stuck in the state of Minnesota, which is a very dangerous place if you weren't born in Minnesota. It functions like a cult, and if you're not from that cult, they will destroy you. And that's what they did to me. So these characters that I made in Daz, it sounds weird, but these characters were slowly becoming like family to me. In my mind, I was attributing characteristics to them. I was getting to know them. Some of the early ones, they were based on my past. I was doing scenes from when I was, a teenager and in college and things. These characters were really important to me, and they're all gone. So that's how it's been for my first 6 months experience working with 3D. I guess I'm back to the drawing board. I'm back to the starting all over again, except that technically I have a whole bunch of content ready to go. I just have to re-download it all. But I'm going to make videos. The only thing that's coming out of this that's positive is that I get to start over. So I get to create my own file system. I get to create my own content organization. I'm going to take my time with it and see what I can come up with. It depends on what Daz Studio allows. I know how I would set this stuff up because I'm very organized, I always have been. And you have to be when you're doing computer programming specifications. You've got to document everything. Um, so as I'm doing that, I'm going to try to come up with some answers to these problems I pointed out here. If I can come up with some solutions, I'm going to share them with you. So keep your eyes open for more videos. Beyond that, I'm starting all over again. And it hurts. It hurts bad. But this stuff is a lot of fun. Make sure you back up at least your data, at least the stuff you've created. And why I didn't do that is kind of a long story, but when you live in a car, nothing goes the way it does when you're in a home. Everything takes 10 times longer than it does when you're in a home. Everything costs 10 times as much. There's no such thing as, why didn't you just do such and such when you live in a car? It may sound like it's easy, but it's not. The fact is, I had backed up a lot of other stuff. My homeless consultant videos up until the ones I started making about 2 months ago, those are all backed up. But that's not a backup of the system. That's data backup. Why I didn't back up the DAS stuff, I think it's because I felt like I was still learning and practicing, and I was planning to do the full system backup anyway. That's probably why. Plus, you don't expect an SSD to die after 11 months. But it did. Live and learn. So back up at least what you're producing, folks, because if you like what and you're proud of what you created, you could lose it forever. And with that, I'm going to let you go. I don't know how long this video is, but I got to go to work so I can afford to pay for these luxury accommodations and make more videos for you. I hope you enjoyed hearing my experiences of my first 6 months working in 3D. Didn't really touch on animation. That's a whole other animal. Ugh, way over my head. Anyway, leave some comments if you got something to add to this, and watch this channel in the future. Subscribe, because as I do learn how to maybe get the file system a little more rational, I will share that with you. All right? Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Happy rendering, everybody.